Greetings shippers, welcome back. And it's time to do something a little different. We need to talk about Fantastic Beasts 2: The Crimes of Grindelwald. Now, before this movie was released, we discussed Grindeldore and all of the concerns leading up to this film. Concerns about how the relationship would be portrayed, what people could expect, and also the history of Grindeldore, from its first announcement to the fandom evolution, and, well, pretty much everything. So if you missed that and that sounds interesting to you, please check it out. You can click the card or the link will be down below. It would be helpful to have some backstory so that you have some context when we describe how this film deals with Grindeldore. So, of course, as this film was recently released at the time of this recording, I will issue a spoiler warning. We're going to try to keep spoilers to a minimum, but there may be some vague inferences or some scenes that are more described than others. So if you don't want to know anything about Fantastic Beasts 2, then perhaps wait until you've seen the film and then come back. And of course, before we get started, if you haven't already, please do follow on social media to stay up to date, know when we're streaming, and just come on over and chit chat about fandom. It's a good time, I swear. Now, when we first discussed Grindeldore, one of the big concerns of that moment was that director David Yates had mentioned that the relationship between Dumbledore and Grindelwald would not be front and center. This was something that irked many fans, as they felt that it was time for this relationship to have its due, its time in the sun as it were, especially as the film seemed as if it was going to be focusing on the lead up to the eventual duel that these two characters have, and as such it seemed like the relationship should be an important factor of that. Others simply felt that this was time for J.K. Rowling to put her money where her announcement was, as it were, and prove that Grindeldore was more than pandering, as there has been a long-held belief that the initial announcement was pandering, a belief that has shifted over time, with some coming to adopt it and some rejecting it. How one feels/felt about Grindeldore will definitely impact how they view this film. For the purposes of this video, we're very much going to separate Grindeldore from the rest of the film. The film in general has its good moments and its bad moments. The best way to sum it up would be to say that it very much is a J.K. Rowling project, so it has all of the strengths and weaknesses of her writing. So if you love all things J.K. Rowling and the types of cliches and tropes that she uses to move the plot forward, then you will probably have a more positive experience with this film. However, if you are someone who is more critical of her writing and some of the techniques she has employed in the past and the depictions of characters, then you may find this film more irritating. And that is to say nothing of how it is edited, especially around the scenes involving Johnny Depp. Indeed, there could be a whole video about some of the things that people have taken issue with this film. From Nagini, to the use of love spells, to how exposition is employed, to how the film handles its plot twists. Because there is a lot to say about how the film unfolds and how it could have unfolded just ever so slightly differently, and a lot of the things that people take issue with may actually have worked. Although, on this mileage very much varies, as some loved this film and feel that everything worked perfectly. This also applies to Grindeldore. So here is where some of the spoilers come in. David Yates was in no way misleading the audience when he mentioned that this relationship was not front and center, because it is not. Indeed, the story of these two is a very small fragment of this film, which has many different plot lines going on. In terms of how Grindeldore is portrayed, it is portrayed very much in the same way as it is in the novels, meaning that it is there in the background, and that depending upon how one looks at it, it could still be dismissed should one so choose. There are several subtle moments within the film wherein Grindelwald or Dumbledore will reference the other and discuss not necessarily their feelings, although at one point that does occur, but more so the importance that the other one has, although that could be taken as towards the plot and not necessarily towards each other. Although of course, if one is a shipper or someone who is aware of the backstory, they will probably take it as referring to their relationship, as it is most likely intended. The crux of the Grindeldore content within this film takes place across two main scenes. Spoilers now. The two main scenes involve a confrontation between Dumbledore and the Ministry, and Dumbledore looking into the Mirror of Erised. So let us first examine the Ministry scene. In this sequence, Dumbledore is asked whether or not he will fight Grindelwald, and he says that he cannot, and as a result he is of course reasonably questioned as to why that is, and the Ministry choose to throw a memory in his face and ask, is this the reason why? However, the memory that they choose to play is not the most incriminating out there. It is a memory of the two of them as youths, looking at each other quite pointedly and quite longingly. One can definitely read in between the lines as to what a look like that means. However, it is simply a look. And for some, that was not enough. This scene could have potentially been strengthened, in my opinion. Potentially to move the plot forward, and mileage may vary, you may absolutely hate this idea, but perhaps if the two had been shown to kiss it would have provided more of a conflict between Dumbledore and the Ministry, because there is tension there and it is explained. However, this would give the Ministry more of a reason to be concerned about Dumbledore. If he has this very explicit history with Grindelwald that people are aware of, it would give the Ministry reason to question his loyalty. As it stands, it makes the Ministry come off as if they are being over-concerned, because of course the portrayal of Dumbledore is as if he is in the right. Which brings us back to J.K. Rowling's writing. The characters are of course portrayed as they are in the series, so if one had issues with Dumbledore's portrayal or portrayals of the Ministry or Slytherins, those things are still very much at the forefront. There have clearly been attempts made to update those portrayals and make them more nuanced. However, the core critiques that many people have are still visible. This is of course only a critique for those who prefer the fanon over the canon. As the fandom of Harry Potter is so large, there are of course people who gravitate towards one or the other. This film will most likely appeal more to people who enjoy the canon as is than those who have a preference for the fanon, as the fanon is seen to be correcting for some people a lot of the decisions made within the novels. So that was our first main instance of Grindeldore in this film. The second, as mentioned, is when Dumbledore gazes into the Mirror of Erised. Here we get more of an elaboration on the memory that is shown to him during the Ministry scene. This scene depicts a blood pact. Again, the intimacy of the scene is very heavily implied, as of course the exchange of blood has several subtextual meanings. However, the film later gives this an explanation that could be rationalized away, so it could take people away from the shipping side of it and towards the more brotherhood or close friends, despite the fact that Dumbledore says that they were in fact closer than brothers. This is why the portrayal is very much as it is within the books. As mentioned in our Grindeldore video, one of the things that J.K. Rowling approved of her depiction of it was that it could be read as friendship should people so choose, so that very much seems to still be coming through. Whether that is intentional or not remains to be seen. However, even while it would be very difficult to misconstrue what these scenes mean, some did want a more overt confirmation, and the relationship still very much follows her canon, as what many forget about the initial announcement is that while it was announced that they had a romantic history, there was a later follow-up announcement stating that it had been a very one-sided relationship, that Grindelwald had very much been using Dumbledore, and that the love that Dumbledore felt was not exactly reciprocated the same way. So this depiction is very much playing up that one-sided love for the moment, which is of course to be expected, as this is Rowling's world, and she is entitled to depict it as she so wishes. And some feel that many are being too critical of her and taking away her agency, while others feel the critiques are justified. Of course, for Grindeldore shippers, this may not be their favorite portrayal, as the fanon long ago eclipsed the canon read, the fanon being that the relationship was mutual. So the main concern of fans going into this film looking for Grindeldore was that it was going to be queerbait. So, was it queerbait? That very much depends on one's definition. For some, they will say 100% yes, for the relationship was not brought to the fore in the way that they would have preferred it to be, and some feel in the way that it was promised, although it must be reminded that it was said before the film was released that it would not be the focus. Others feel that no, it is not queerbaity, it is exactly as it was presented within the trailers. This small background moment that is meant to build up the world and the pathos of the characters within it, but less something where one is going to spend a lot of time. Also, if one was going into the film not necessarily looking for Grindeldore content, then they are less likely to be bothered by it. However, that can be said for most of the romantic relationships in this film, although there are some more in the forefront, but they fall into very cliched tropes. Again, if one enjoys how Rowling writes relationships, they will enjoy these kind of tropes. If they do not, they may find them irritating and even outdated. So, for those wondering if the film does contain some Grindeldore moments, it does. If they are wondering if they are a large portion, they are not. However, that is not to say that they may not be in the future. As mentioned, there are still 3 more films upcoming. However, how much they are going to depict Grindelwald in the future films remains up in the air, as there has been a lot of pushback about Depp in the role, and that has continued. The backlash is still very strong, and indeed the backlash was also felt on the set itself, and that is very much reflected in how some of the scenes are filmed. In short, mileage will very much vary on whether or or not this was enough Grindeldore content for those who are very much looking forward to it. Suffice it to say, if that was one's main reason for going to see the film or their main excitement or draw of it, they may very well be disappointed. This also depends, however, on how they feel about the overall film outside of it. For if one very much enjoys the film as a whole, this may make up for what they view as a lack of Grindeldore content. But of course, everyone will have a different view of this, so what is yours? If you have seen the film, did you enjoy the Grindeldore content that was presented? Was it what you expected? Do you feel that fans were expecting too much, or that they were led on? How did you feel about the film in general? And also, would you enjoy a more in-depth ranty version about a lot of the things that happened in the film, because there's a lot there that is probably going to be filled in fanon. If this film is latched onto in the transformative work sense, there are going to be a lot of missing scenes and gaps and character development that are going to be filled in, because a lot happens very quickly in this film, and there are a lot of relationships that are simply there and not fully established. Now, some may say that the tie-in screenplay may flesh out more of this than the film itself. However, that is a very different argument, as some feel that all the information needed should be presented in the main source text, and not in an additional tie-in text that one must purchase. However, that is a discussion for another time. For now, leave all of your answers and thoughts down below. Also, what you think about my idea of a kiss edition. Terrible? Good? More kissing? Less kissing? Leave it alone, it was perfect? Leave all opinions down below. There are so many questions, you know the drill. Number them if you can. I love a good essay comment. As always, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to chat about fandom with me, specifically Fantastic Beasts 2 today. There are, as always, more videos coming soon. So until then, let's get to the outro. Bye-bye. This has been Shipper's Guide to the Galaxy. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Special thanks to all of my patrons, names on the side, for helping to make these videos possible. There are, as always, more videos coming soon, so until then, stay tuned, for there are as many ships out there as there are stars in the sky.